Hi everyone, I'm Munya and welcome back to elevate-psych. Today I'll be helping you tackle the multiple choice aspect of A-level psychology exams. Now when we turn to the examiner's report, we find that not a lot of time is spent on this section. Why? Because it's usually very simple and straightforward. However, that's exactly the trap that many students fall into. We see a simple MCQ, we jump for the answer that seems to be right, and we keep it moving. It's an approach that loses marks because yes, MCQs are short, but they do still require a little bit of thinking. Examiners will deliberately give you options that all sound feasible and all relate to the topic in some way. This isn't like year 6 where you get asked what animal says meow, a cat, a brick, a cactus, or a cactus-shaped brick. Your knowledge of definitions and concepts has to be word perfect if you want to bag the marks. Before we look at some examples, I want you to remember this 3-step rule to answering MCQs. Rule number 1, read and reread the question. Number 2, consider what the answer is before looking at the options. And number 3, eliminate irrelevant or weaker options, going for the one closest to your internal answer. Let's look at some examples of how this might work. In the question on screen, we're asked to identify the incorrect statement relating to repression. So straight from the get-go, we know that the people who are going to find this easiest are the ones who have a clear definition of repression and what it means. On screen now, I'll show you my definition of the term repression. Repression is the process of forcing thoughts into the unconscious and preventing painful or dangerous thoughts from entering consciousness. The process leads the individual to feel naive, unfamiliar, and unaware of their situation and condition, as they are being shielded from negative, unpleasant memories. In this instance, we'll now answer the question by holding up each option against my definition and seeing whether it matches up. For option A, repression can lead to unpleasant memories causing stress. We can see from our definition that negative thoughts are pushed out of the consciousness into memory. So this seems to be correct. Option B says repression causes people to have difficulty accessing unpleasant memories. We can see in our definition that repression makes people feel naive, unfamiliar, and unaware of the unpleasant memory behind the situation. So again, this seems quite accurate. Option C says repression involves people choosing to forget unpleasant memories. Now, alarm bells start to go off here because in our definition, we see that negative thoughts are being dealt with unconsciously. I'm pretty confident that this is the wrong answer, but we can only be 100% sure by eliminating the last option. Option D says repression involves unpleasant memories being kept from conscious awareness. This is almost word for word with our definition, so it's probably true. So you can see there were 2 key factors in answering this question: having a strong definition and cross-checking the options with this. Let's see how it plays out in another example. In the next question, we can see there are 2 right answers. So again, a strong definition will help us to identify what they are. Here's my definition for determinism. Determinism is a belief in the inevitability of causation. Everything that happens is the only possible thing that could happen. Some approaches see the source of determinism as being the environment. Others see it as coming from inside the individual, e.g. genetics. In any case, the individual does not actively choose the chain of events and networks that lead to a behaviour. Once again, let's start to cross-check and eliminate. Option A states that people are always responsible for their actions. Our definition says that individuals do not actively choose their behaviours, which suggests they are not responsible. So we can rule out that option. Option B states people behave in a random fashion. We know from our definition that there are chains of events in place leading to a behaviour. In other words, there is actually a cause. It's not just random. So we can rule out this option. Option C states people's behaviour always has a cause. Again, we know there's a chain of events in place, so this statement seems correct in relation to our definition. Option D states people exercise full choice over how they behave. We know this is the complete opposite of determinism, so we can rule this out. Finally, option E states people have no choice about how they act. This is a pretty clear part of our definition, so once more we can mark this as being the likely answer. So having considered all answers, C and E match up best with our definition, and so we can mark these down as our answers. For our final example, this one's a bit trickier. We've got a lot of keywords, which means we're going to have a lot of definitions. Because we're talking about the broad field of social influence, we can expect the definition to be a bit longer. Conformity is a type of social influence involving a change in belief or behaviour in order to fit in with a group. Specifically, we conform for 2 reasons: to be liked, normative social influence, or in order to be right, informational social influence. There are 3 types of conformity. Number 1, compliance, conforming to the majority, publicly in spite of not really agreeing with them privately. Type 2 is internalization, genuine public and private conformity, which means publicly changing behavior to fit in with the group whilst also agreeing with them privately. And number 3, identification. Individuals conform to the expectations of a social role, so a nurse, police officers, but not necessarily because they agree, but because they fall as part of a role. So with the key terms outlined, let's start to tackle the question. Question 1 states publicly changing behavior whilst maintaining a different private view. We know that the use of public and private usually occurs when we're talking about types of conformity. So of our 3, compliance matches perfectly. We can pencil it in as the answer. Question 2 states group pressure leading to a desire to fit in with the group. We know that the term fit in generally refers to being liked or accepted, and in our definition we're talking about normative social influence, so we can mark this down. Question 3 describes when a person lacks knowledge of how to behave and looks to the group for guidance. This refers to being right, and according to our definition we're talking about informational social influence. Finally, question 4 describes conforming to the behavior of a role model. Got 2 remaining options, identification and internalization. Of those 2, we know that identification is the process of filling a role and following an example without having to change privately. So this seems to be the right answer. Even with so much easily confused information, by having our clear definitions, we can cross-check our notes and eliminate the answers. So with that said, the action points for this episode are to make sure you have a clear set of definitions for each topic, and once you have those definitions, have a go at answering our practice questions that we would have emailed to you when you signed up. If you like, you could even create some definitions based on the syllabus or mark scheme and have a go at some actual practice questions to make sure you're hitting every mark. I've been Munya, this has been Elevate Psych. Peace.